Hi, this is Ms. Cooper with a tutorial on how to draw curved objects on an isometric grid. So today I'm going to be demonstrating how to do circles, how to do O's or zeros, and how to do otherwise square objects that have rounded corners on the edges. So as usual, when I do isometric drawings that aren't instinctual, I draw a grid first on a separate piece of paper using squares. So for a circle, I don't need a big grid. I'm just going to do about 4 by 4 blocks. With the blue marker, I'm going to mark out the parts where a circle would touch that square if I were to draw it in the middle. And I marked out the center point too. So now I'm connecting the dots inside the grid to figure out what a perfect circle would look like so I know how to translate it onto the isometric grid paper. I'm also marking out my corners just to make it easier to see for the demonstration. So now I'm going to, oh, I forgot, I measured it. Sometimes this is helpful for translating it onto the paper. So now that I remember my measurements, I remember I'm going up 4 blocks and out 4 blocks as well. So this will be the front of a circle, and I'm also marking it on the paper for clarity. So now I'm going to go in with the blue marker and draw the actual circle. So remembering where my corners are, where my center points are, and where it touches the edges, I'm going to mark that out and then connect them with curves that loop across the corners. You'll notice it does turn it into an ellipse or an oval shape, which might look wrong at first, but when you follow the grid, it is right, and as you add shadows and other 3D effects, it begins to really take shape and look awesome. If you'll notice, I'm paying attention to where my circle sits in the corner, and I know that I did, in fact, make it the correct shape. So now thinking 3D-wise, I would like it to go back about 1 cube. So I marked a couple different areas because it is a circle, so it's kind of one continuous line, and that helps me envision it. It's not perfect, but if I go in with a ruler, it gets a lot easier. So now I'm going to show you how to draw the zero now that you have a basis of how I think this process through. So again, homemade grid, kind of wiggly, but I'm getting it ready so I can practice doing a zero. And I'm going to follow a similar process, but this time there's a second hole in the middle. I'm using a different size because this is a tall version. So I'm working with what's already an oval, and then I'm making it even more of an oval when it hits the grid paper. So now I'm marking off my center points. It's 7 by 5, so it's pretty easy to find a middle block when I'm drawing this one out. My homemade grid made it look a little shorter and squattier than it normally would be, but that's okay because it does fix itself when I get to the actual paper. This is just to mark it out. Now my center is going to be 2 blocks from the edge on all sides, which makes it about 1 block wide and 3 blocks tall. So now I have the middle of this donut or O shape, but remember you can always make it thinner. I also marked my corners so I can remember to check back on that when I go through because it does neatly go through that 1 block diagonal out from the corner. So now I'm marking out that bounding box on the paper. It is helpful to do this, but of course when you draw you would probably use pencil so that you don't have a big marker marking around yours. At this point, I'm marking out my corners, my middles, all those important points for me to connect, and I'm working my way into the middle so that I don't have to do too much guessing. I checked my corner and it does look correct, so it looks like I'm good to go. You can check all the corners if you want to. I just usually don't, once I realize that I've pretty much got the hang of it. This one I had to double back over a couple times, but normally you would work in pencil, so this wouldn't be a problem anyway. Now I'm doing all my counting and very carefully marking out where the middle will be so that it makes sense in that space. And I made it an oval. In the future, I would tilt it just a little bit more. So now I'm marking a couple points about 1 block out from where they are to figure out how I could make this shape 3D. It's important that you keep it consistent. It will round back around the edges, so you can also mark 1 block out from even parts that don't really stick out super far, and that will help you really get the piece to go all the way around and make it look convincingly 3D. You can also add more later too in terms of shading and slowly build out from there. The last thing I'm going to show you on the back of my grid paper is how to do an object that is otherwise pretty square and straight but might have a rounded corner. So I'm going in with my homemade grid and I'm making it nice and big since it is a simple shape. This would fit in a 5x5 square, but I didn't mark the whole square this time. I made it 5 blocks wide and 5 blocks tall, and then I'm going to go in 2 blocks straight and leave that corner set of 3x3 or 9 blocks and cut my partial circle across that. It goes pretty neatly through that corner area, so I marked that out because that's a terrific reference point for me to look at when I'm drawing it on the actual piece of paper. So this time, since you've seen me do the bounding box a couple times, I'm not actually going to draw the bounding box this time. I'm just going to mark it out. I knew that it was 5 tall and that it was 5 wide, and that the first 2 blocks coming out from either corner are just kind of straight and regular. I marked off the corner so I can see it a little bit better, and then I cut that little semicircle through, and I take it 1 block out. I even have the corner marked, which neatly lands 1 block out, and then I continue to go around, but I don't add any other lines because if you really were drawing this for real, there wouldn't be any sharp corners or anything on that edge. Now what I'm going to show you here as a little bonus is what happens if you rotate a circle a different direction. Does it do anything different? It does and doesn't. It takes a very similar shape. The thing is you've just rotated it instead, kind of like any other form, but sometimes when you're doing circles and ellipses, it's easy to second guess yourself. So I redrew it again down there from a different angle, and I'm measuring out how to make it round again, and showing you kind of a different perspective than usual. Instead, this is pointing down instead of this little nub kind of pointing up. Kind of looks like the top of a Lego brick. I shaded it to have a little bit more effect for the demo. Remember to keep your grid handy. This is the best way to do any of your rounded objects. I'm going to leave you with this little area here in case you want to look at it again, or pause here so that you can reference these again. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any suggestions or questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you for watching.